insecure, and left alone.
Rescue the Fosters is about changing the foster system. We want to ensure every child has a safe environment to grow and become healthy, successful adults.
Additionally, when I was in the foster care system, I had to defend for myself. Rescue the Foster is here to empower the youth aging out of the system and offer resources to ensure they are not dependent on the government.
What we observed was that children become institutionalized and end up in prison and providing the government with more funds.
Rescue the Foster will provide coaching, resume writing, interview skills, professional attire for interviews, budgeting, applying for college, and obtaining housing.
We want these youth to live the most freeing, successful life possible.
It is their right and our responsibility to ensure that our future kids and grandchildren can live happy lives.
Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord.
Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future.
Good evening and welcome to Rescue the Fosters. I am Gino, your host, and as always, my co-host and co-founder of Rescue the Fosters, Sylvia Beachy. Sylvia, how are you?
I'm good, Gino. How are you?
Doing good. Hey, I'm pretty sure I caught a glimpse of you in that clip there.
Yeah, you did. Directly behind me and Monique. We were sitting directly behind where the speakers were speaking. So that was us.
Well, there's technically, folks, there's no oversight in the state of Georgia. I mean, they say there is, but there really isn't. But I guess there was that day. If the both of you were, if that's four eyes on them, that's looking over their shoulders. They need that, right? Keep them accountable.
Yes. Yeah, we're trying because this 80 million deficit, we have to stay on top of it because if we don't, they're hoping we just go away, you know?
Oh yeah, like a fly, just fly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this fly's not leaving. That's for sure. That is for sure. Well, anyway, Sylvia, we have returning guests with us tonight. In fact, we're going to have a couple returning guests tonight with some updates, and we're going to show some clips that should be going viral, in my opinion, because they are pure fire. So if you can introduce our guests, please do.
Yeah, so right now we have with us Chip DeWalt, and Monique will be joining us soon. She's going to be hopping on in 10 minutes. But Chip and Monique are both victims of the Special Victims Unit. And I say victims because they were targeted and gone after by the state Commissioner Candace Brose, who literally sat in every one of their hearings. And I've been to court many times, and I've never seen Candace in any of the other court hearings. But they were targeted, and they fought for their children, and they did get them back. So he's part, Chip and Monique are a huge part of why Rescue the Fosters is fighting so hard, because this should have never happened. It was unnecessary. It caused chaos and trauma, long life trauma. So thank you, Chip, for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. Seriously, I appreciate the opportunity to just share our story and shed some light where it needs to be shed.
Right. Well, Chip, last time we had you on, it was just great discussion. I mean, and you're so. The irony here is they went after you, and in my opinion, you're obviously overqualified to be an adoptive parent. And what did they do? No, they had to go after you. They had to make some kind of allegation against an innocent man. And in your case, they tried to stick some stupid, what was it, driving under the influence, I believe, in another state that never
Yeah.
really happened. I mean, that was all cleared up. It was a mistaken, I guess, mistake by the police. But it was cleared up, and that should have been just like brushed under and said, okay, yeah, no problem. Sorry for the misunderstanding. But no, as they always do, they had to take it to another level. So I don't know if we need to go into your whole story again, Chip, but maybe you can just kind of summarize for the good folks out there watching. And by the way, folks, this is the Peach State, Georgia, we are talking about tonight, just so you're aware of that. So, yeah, if you can just maybe summarize, Chip, that would help a lot.
Are you talking about the incident you just referred to?
Well, I guess that could be part of it, but more or less just your story and what happened to you.
Okay. Well,
Short version.
yeah, the short version is that we were introduced through common friends to this young lady who was just in a bad life situation. She was suffering from addiction and just was in a series of decisions that had just put her in a bad place. And she had a little boy that she couldn't properly care for. And she, at that point, she didn't really want to be a mom. She was kind of overwhelmed with life. So she reached out to us. The first contact we had was her calling us. Never met her before, didn't know anything about her. And anyway, when she reached out, she said, "Hey, I heard you guys are interested in adoption." And okay. And she specifically told us that she did not want to have her son put into the foster care system, which is why she was reaching out to us. So she did. She reached out to us, and we ended up going through the what we thought were the proper legal avenues. We had hired a lawyer, and we followed the advice of the lawyer, and she signed over legal surrender to us. And then in the state of Georgia, after 72 hours, those surrenders are binding. And somehow the state of Georgia came in and DFCS in particular inserted themselves by accusing us of an illegal adoption. So the first question I would have with that is, if the adoption was never finalized, what's illegal about it? So, um, and we had Jacob for a while, and there were paperwork issues. And again, we were trying to work all through all this stuff with a lawyer, but we were in no hurry to get it all done because we were just kind of living our lives. And then all of a sudden, one of the investigators showed up, and we were kind of misled by the investigator, like, hey, if you help us out and you do this, this is like the next step towards adoption, so you'll provide us all this information. So we were completely open and transparent. We told them what our challenges were and what the issues were, and so we were hoping that they would help us kind of find resolutions. And in that process, they discovered that we did not actually have what is called guardianship, legal guardianship of a child that we had been caring for about 4 years. So they used that and they dragged us into court and said, "Hey, well, the child's in the state with no legal guardian. What if something happened?" And well, what they never did was they never gave us an opportunity to get legal representation. So they call us into court. The investigator lied to us and told us, quote, "I don't know why you need to be there, but Jacob, or who's our adopted son, we have now finalized the adoption with him." But she said, I don't know what they need you in court for, but Jacob needs to be there." And that was a blatant lie because they show up, and that was when they said that we didn't have the proper documents that we needed to be able to care for him, even though they couldn't show anything that we were missing in his care. So basically the basis for them taking him from us was ridiculous, and it never should have happened. So instead of coming alongside us and saying, "Oh, hey, this is how things should be. This is what you need to do this the right way," they used that, they leveraged it, and then all the information that we provided them in hopes of being able to get assistance with it. They used all that against us and brought it up in court as a means to take him from us. And so I'm 100% convinced it has nothing to do with looking out for Jacob. It's all about the funding that is tied to
Exactly.
Jacob and what happens. So from there, they would, get him into counseling, and then they would put us into services, and they would do all these things that were supposed to help repatriate us and reunify us after he was removed from our home, which they're not even asking the most important question, which is why was he removed in the first place? Why did anybody go through it? So at the time, Jacob was 4, so 4.5. And so he went through 7 months of unnecessary trauma, being moved to 3 different foster homes, and then having to deal with visitations, and we're getting reports from the transporters that, he's asking questions like, well, why don't my mom and dad just come get me? I mean, and you hear something like that, and it breaks your heart
Yeah.
because I can't, how can you explain the defects, corruption, and court system to a 5-year-old in terms that they understand? The only thing that they know is that they're not at their home. And he was saying things like, I have a brother, I have sisters, I have 2 dogs, and I don't get to see them. I mean, you're hearing things like that, and it's heartbreaking. And all of it was unnecessary.
Yeah, it's terrible. I can't even imagine what goes through a child's mind when they're away from loved ones like that. Ugh. Well, thanks for sharing that, Chip. You know what? I'm going to go ahead. Sylvia, is it okay if I go ahead and play Chip's video before the hearing? What was this? 2 weeks ago?
Of course. No,
Oh,
that was not even a week ago.
okay. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. This is on my TikTok. Sylvia had sent a clip of you, Chip, laying it out before these people. And like I said, pre-show, they needed to hear it. And Monique, we're going to get to yours in a little bit, but good to see you, Monique. Thanks for joining us. If you guys can mute, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to play this. Okay, I don't know what's going on. We're going to start over. Okay, hold on. I'm having all kinds of weird things going on. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear us out there now. John, can you give me a thumbs up in the chat, please, in Rumble? They said they couldn't hear anything that was playing. You guys could hear it? I could hear it fine.
I could hear it.
I could hear it fine.
Okay, I'm not sure why. I was sharing it with the audience. I'm going to do it again. Yep, sounds on. Hopefully you guys can hear. John, can you hear me? I love technology. Oh my gosh. Testing. Testing. Anybody out there? Okay, so John says nope. What is going on? Hold on, guys. Sorry. I just got to make sure all my sound settings are exactly the same. Could be this right here. Okay, now you guys can still hear me? Okay, that's good. John, how about now? I know we're live, so you guys can see us. They're just lip reading right now. It's just, sorry. It's showing that the sound is going out, so we should be good. Sylvia, I should have never tried that other program before we started. I think that's what's messing everything up.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
John, can you hear us? Sylvia, can you do me a favor? Are you on your phone?
Yes.
Oh. All right. Let me see if it's coming through on my phone. Hold on one second.
Should we just start over?
Well, it's already live. I don't want to reconnect, and everybody's already out there. So if they're patiently waiting, which they are, thank you guys. If you can hear me, I think we're going to be okay. I think there was a setting that got screwed up on my computer. I'm just checking with Rumble to make sure they're getting sound. You know what the worst is? When you're waiting for your own video to show up because you got to watch a commercial. Okay, there is sound, so we're good. Okay, we're back. Sorry, guys. So, all right, we're obviously not going to... I don't know what they heard or didn't hear. So, Chip, I don't want you to go through your whole story again. I don't want to do that to you.
No,
Unless...
I think it started after you started playing the speech. That's when they started saying that there was no sound.
All right, let me well, go ahead and introduce Monique. I'm going to get that queued back up so we can play the TikTok video again because they didn't get to hear that, and that's very important. I want them to hear that.
Okay, and then Monique, are you playing Monique's speech also?
Yep.
Okay, so the short version, because I had said Monique and Chip have the same kind of story where the special victims unit that Candace Brose created went after their family and their adopted children. So it was their adopted children that the state went after, saying that the paperwork was not legal, and then placed them in foster care or with the biological parent. So that's the short version. And then Monique and Chip both had to fight the state to get their kids back, which is insane because the group, they were placed in group homes. Monique's kids were, and group homes are not stable for kids. They're not safe. So they both have similar stories where it's the same thing, a pattern. It shows a pattern, right? But they do really well in their speeches explaining their story.
Right. And I think the premise, you were in
Now I
this.
can't hear you.
That would be my fault. I was muted. We are not off to a good start tonight. I wish I could just start all over. Sorry. Really, the premise for this is this hearing was last week, and Candace Brose, who's the commissioner in Georgia of DFCS, the Division of Family and Children, is pretty much trying to defend herself. And we're going to say allegations against her. There's an $85 million deficit there in Georgia. Where's the money? Where's $85 million? If that was you and I guarantee you I would not be on the screen right now. I'd be behind bars. So we need to really figure out where the money is. And then she's going before this hearing and trying to lay out the tracks and all the evidence supposedly that, everything but the money, really. That's what I heard in that hearing. And a lot of excuses and talking about how they've, really gotten better since 2021 by, with the group home situation. Now there was only a few kids that had to go in a hotel or in an office building, all of this nonsense that doesn't get to the root problem of what we're going to discuss tonight. So, okay, sorry, Sylvia, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we did want to play her speech for everyone too. Yeah. So I did send that to you.
Okay. All right. So Chip, we're going to go back to your video here on TikToks. Everybody go ahead and mute. Now, thank you guys in Rumble, Foxhole, and over on X for sticking around. We appreciate you guys. If you can like and share, that would be great. These stories need to go viral. We need people to see what is going on in the state of Georgia and really all over our great country. Families need to be treated better than this, and especially children. So, all right, try this again. Here we go.
I'm a military veteran who served honorably for 25 years before retiring. My wife and I, we are Georgia residents and have been for the past 10 years. 4 years ago, our lives completely changed for the better when we met Jacob, who is now our adopted son. However, the path to Jacob's adoption was rocky, to say the least. Jacob's biological mother reached out to us for adoption and signed over her legal rights. We had Jacob in our care for nearly 4 years before DFCS began investigating us. We were totally transparent with DFCS and explained what our challenges with finalizing our adoptions were. Instead of helping us with these challenges and move towards adoption, DFCS used the very information that we provided them against us. We were falsely accused of medical neglect and for not properly caring for our son, which ultimately led to his removal from our home. In order to get Jacob back, Cobb County ordered my wife and I to complete psychological assessments and parental fitness evaluations. In order to expedite this process, our lawyer proposed that we pay for these court-ordered evaluations and even agreed upon which providers would be used. We complied with everything. We completed the evaluations quickly and without any delay. However, upon receiving the results, the state refused to accept them and violated our agreement. Instead, the state insisted that we get new psychological evaluations and assessments that were completed by a state-appointed psychologist and a state-funded psychologist. The additional testing was unnecessary and an expense the state did not need to incur. Even the state-funded psychologists could not understand the need for the additional testing. Our son Jacob was in foster care for 7 months. During that time, he was there with 3 different foster homes, and he had multiple transporters for weekly visitations. According to Ms. Brose's recent post, the fastest categories of spending are transportation and behavior aids. I believe there are ways to mitigate these costs that Ms. Brose is simply failing to identify, and she's not properly managing them, such as local kinship placement for families or friends that is often refused or denied, which could significantly reduce transportation costs. Transporters are mismanaged. For example, on 2 separate occasions, our transporter arrived at Jacob's daycare to pick him up for our weekly visitation with him, and they didn't have a car seat. So our choice was either to miss the visitation or come up with an alternative solution. So I drove to the local Target, purchased a car seat, installed the car seat in the transporter's car, had the transporter drive to the daycare and pick him up and meet us so that we could do our visitation. This happened twice. So the same scenario happened twice under Ms. Brose's supervision. I bring this up as evidence that Ms. Brose, I think she's in over her head. She cannot manage people properly. She cannot manage a budget, and her mistakes are costing taxpayers dearly. Even worse, our children are suffering. We know 2 couples who are Georgia certified foster parents who have been fostering children in Georgia for over 12 years, who offered to take Jacob, but they were refused. Instead of keeping Jacob local within his community and where people know him, he was moved 2 more times and eventually placed in Macon, Georgia, 2.5 hours away, where transporters would have to pick him up and drive him to Atlanta for weekly visitations. This choice, the choice to forego a local option for placement 2.5 hours away, is a misappropriation of funds as well as reckless and needless spending of Georgia tax dollars. The state also ordered weekly drug testing for both my wife and I. However, we were not aware that DFCS has a well-known problem with false positive drug tests in as many as 1 in 5 tests. In over 20 drug tests, my wife tested positive on only 1 occasion, while all of my drug tests were negative. However, the court insisted that both of us continue with weekly drug testing throughout the duration of our case. Now, I point out that I'm a military veteran. I've been drug tested since I was 19 years old. I currently am an airline pilot. I have to follow those FAA regulations. So the fact that I had to do drug testing at all was just completely ridiculous and a total waste of time and money for the state. So I look at all these things. We also, in addition, my wife was sent to be evaluated by Dr. Berger at the Georgia Psychological Associates, where she was given another drug test when she arrived. Dr. Berger confirmed to us that DFCS told him to go out and buy a drug test at a local CVS and administer the test to her in his office. Dr. Berger admitted to both of us that he had never done anything like this before and that our case was, quote, clearly personal. All of this was billed to the state of Georgia. This is an abuse of power and a complete lack of regard for the financial repercussions coming from the decisions DFCS makes. It's clear that Ms. Brose cannot properly manage the funds our state entrusts with her, and her results are lacking. DFCS is spending more, keeping children in foster care longer, and reunification rates have dropped dramatically. Clearly, Ms. Brose cannot do the job, and I think it's time we find someone who can. Our children simply deserve better. And as one final thing, I would like to point out, Ms. Brose attended every one of our hearings. She was in court for every one of them. When the court finally voted to return Jacob to us, Ms. Brose objected, and she argued that Jacob could not be kept safe in our home because I had been falsely arrested for a DUI. And that DUI was still awaiting adjudication in the state of Florida. The details of my case are pretty simple. While I was on vacation in Florida, I was driving alone, and I was pulled over and questioned by the local police. Because my face was red and my eyes were bloodshot, they assumed that I had been drinking when I had not. I was arrested and given a breathalyzer test where my results were a 0.000% blood alcohol content. They processed the arrest assuming that I was under the influence of drugs. I don't do drugs. So they administered a drug urine test, which also came back negative. Eventually, the charges were dropped and the case was dismissed. I find this extremely hypocritical of Ms. Brose, because Ms. Brose does not hold herself to the same standards she expects of me. Her husband, Jason Brose, is facing recent DUI charges. Some reports say 3 to 4 times the legal limit of impairment, and her young children were in the car with him. Her own children were there. Her own children were in danger, and something needs to be done. Ms. Brose does not hold herself to the same standard she expects of others, and it's time we do something about it. Thank you. Walt.
Whoa. So good, Chip. That was just like, I love it. Bullet point after bullet point. And when we show the clip of Brose a little later, you'll see like some of her talking points. And I love that you went after those talking points. You know, your story was interwoven, but you went after why is 85 million missing? Well, part of it's because of the things you mentioned, Chip. Just mismanagement, abuse, fraud, right? All of those.
Absolutely, Gino. I mean, if the court is going to, if you have the lawyers that get put in place and judges agree, and then you come up with like basically a plan, and you have a way to fund that plan. And like in our case, our lawyers and the state lawyer all agreed with the judge. They said, "Hey, we want A, B, C, and D. We're going to go to these particular providers. We're going to take care of everything. And in order to expedite things, we said we'll pay for all those." And then they reject the information that was provided from the agreement that they had. It makes no sense. And then, so where was the relief in that? It still continued to prolong the situation. And there's taxpayer dollars because Jacob was in foster care longer while they did this additional testing, and the funding for the testing that was paid for by the state. So I just think the one important thing that needs to happen here is an audit. And if you can't get through an audit without total transparency, then there's something seriously wrong. And there needs to have action taken by that.
I mean, in our case, it was pretty similar also because we understood that the state is, I mean, pretty slow, right? I mean, the government doesn't do anything really fast, of course. So we did exactly the same thing. They said, we want this number of services. And by the way, when Candace Brose said the judge ordered services, now there were a number of services the judge ordered for my daughter initially, right? Or the kids. They wanted psychological testing, they wanted some things. But who determined what we as the family or the family that they wanted to reunify with, what services were done was the state. And, we were given the maximum pretty much of everything. But even with that, we offered to pay for all of it. So the moment that we heard wind of services, we started looking up classes. Where could we do the classes? Where could we do the counseling? Can we get our own counseling? Because we were very well aware that it was going to take time. It took 3 months just to get those services even put in place. Now, just to begin them, right? So this is 3 months that we have children sitting in foster care just because we can't get a start date on day one. I mean, I think even another court hearing went by and that had to, roll the ball to get the services put in place. Whereas we could have had everything put in place within not even a week.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. Chip, you mentioned an audit, and I think all of us are on the same page. Yes, absolutely an audit. But it has to be independent and outside of the agencies, right? It can't be within the government. We know that doesn't work. That just never works.
Well, there's federal funding that's tied to this. So
Yes.
it needs to be a federal audit. You need to have somebody outside of the state of Georgia, because then, I mean, there's so many things that just don't make any sense. And when
Chip, I think you're muted.
Yep.
I'm sorry. So you'll see things like Miss Brose will point out the fact that there was a study that was that was performed, and then she cites that study as defense for the way that the state does certain things, and then you realize that study was actually funded by the state of Georgia. So they're kind of paying people to help present their argument on things, and then using that as their defense. It just makes no sense. And there's the accountability for this stuff. I mean, $80 million. I mean, I was in the military for 25 years. I ran budgets. I worked in the Pentagon. I ran budgets there as well, too. So when you come to these things, an $80 million shortfall, somebody's in charge of that. And when you have a $1.2 billion budget and there's no oversight with it, and the thing is you hide under the veil of, well, we're taking care of children. We can't tell you all this information because it's about the kids. Really? Is that what you're going to tell me? It's $80 million is just there taking care of kids when now you have transporters, doctors, therapists, all these other different people that are just not able to get funded now?
Well, actually, I just want to correct you, Chip. Somebody is in charge of that, but let's say who is in charge of that. It's the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services is in charge of ensuring whether other people are looking at the budget, dealing with the budget. At the end of the day, she is the head that is overseeing all the people dealing with the budget. So that really falls on her back. That she can't explain where the money is. And now I've heard her speak a multitude of times, and I'm kind of flabbergasted is the word, that there's really no concrete numbers. There's a lot of reasons, like BA services and transportation services and judges ordering more services. A lot of words about services. However, what I have not seen is this is the number of behavioral aid services that we provided in this fiscal year. This is the difference in this fiscal year, and this is what has led to, the budget deficit. I mean, I'm not in charge of a state, I'm a small business owner, but a state agency like this, small business owner, I've had my hand in, a little bit, knowing a little bit about how federal budgets work when I was working with a company called Easter Seals North Georgia a long time ago, and a simple position like a parenting what is it, president of a parent committee. So we were given a piece of a budget and we had to use it. And we were, tutored a little bit on how federal budgets work. In that very small position, I learned that what I'm hearing is ludicrous.
Oh, good points. We live in a day with modern technology. I know you probably don't think I have modern technology by the way this show started tonight, but the government should have modern technology. And you would think there's checks and balances. So, for instance, if the commissioner has to, let's say, spend $100,000, it seems like there should be people watching the money trail, right? It's somebody inputs it into the computer, $100,000 to X agency or to, X company, whatever it is. And there should be data just being entered every time a check is being cut, right? I mean, that seems like that's how business runs.
She is the oversight.
Yeah,
She is the oversight.
Here's the problem, though. But I mean, okay, so for instance, she should be and she should be held accountable for this. At some point, someone say, okay, Candace, there's $85 million missing. You cut a whole bunch of checks, right? Or wired money or whatever they're doing. Let's look at who it was sent to, right? Like follow the money. That's how you figure out if it's actually happening or isn't happening. Now, this is just me. This is my personal opinion. I have a feeling a lot of that money didn't go where it was supposed to. That's just a sneaky suspicion I have. That seems to happen with our government officials when they get a whole bunch of money and they don't, it's not their own and they just spend it like it is. So I have a feeling that's what's going on here. And she's just going to kind of give the runaround for a while until somebody holds her accountable and says, no, we need to know where it's at. We're going to have a serious talk, right? And then there has to be like subpoenas. You got to subpoena people. You got to get people in there and figure out what the heck happened to $85 million. I mean, I think the people of Georgia, the good people, the taxpayers of Georgia, they should be demanding that. That's a whole bunch of money.
What's really interesting is that day that we were listening to, multiple agencies present budgets and, shortfalls. Every single other agency had a coherent explanation as to a shortfall or where their money was going, where they wanted their money to go, and any mistakes that were made and transparency. There was a lot of transparency, but we did not see that from the Department of Human Services and the commissioner and whoever was presenting the budget with her, at least on that last day, last Friday. Um, what the presentation sounded like, according to a friend. I showed a friend in another state that used to be in charge of policies and procedures for a very large corporation, and her response was, "This sounds like gobbledygook."
Well, I'm
Word
not.
salad.
Yeah, word salad for
Word
sure.
salad.
I
Where's
will.
I don't know if you want to play that speech.
We can play that for sure. Oh, go ahead, Chip. Are you gonna say something?
No, no, I mean, Monique brings up a good point here, and every job I've ever had has accountability in it. And to Sylvia's point, where she's bringing up the oversight, I mean, it's like putting the wolf in charge of the hen house, because you you have somebody who's spending the money, and then you're the one that's supposed to have the oversight on how that money is being properly spent.
Hmm.
So what incentive is there to ensure that anything's done correctly? So, and that's why you can have this problem compound into $80 million. So I just think we need to enforce accountability and enforce the transparency and honesty, and the only way to do that is an audit and find out where all the money goes. And if there are mistakes, rectify them.
Right,
Nope.
right.
But Gino, to your point, um, it's very suspicious, and until you get an audit to be able to answer the questions properly with finite answers instead of vague generalities that really don't, provide any substantial information, then until that happens, you need to have an audit which with solid facts and figures that can basically provide the taxpayers an explanation of what has happened. $80 million is not, I mean, it's not chump change. It's enough. I mean, you can do a lot of good things with that.
I mean, here's an example, for instance. I see a lot of line items, and first of all, a lot of the line items don't even really add up to the number that we're talking about. But there's a lot of line items, and I'm going to make one up. Let's say we spent $2 million on behavioral aid services, and I want to make that really clear. I'm using that number as a example, not that $2 million was spent on behavioral aid services or that is a line item, right? But let's say we did. And I'm presenting this now to an appropriations committee and I have a budget. Okay, so do I have all of that reconciled, right? Do I have a receipt for all of the services done by behavioral aides across the state, at least a sent line item from each county that also has receipts that can be backed up? And is that number actually $2 million? Because I can come to you and say, okay, yeah, we spent $2 million, and well, where's the proof behind what was spent? And I hope somebody's looking at that. I don't think that that's going to be shown to the public, right? Oops, there goes a cat. Obviously, obviously, we don't expect to go through the Department of Human Services receipts, but I do hope that somebody is, in fact, going through each and every receipt when they have a line item and say, this is where this money went, that's backed up by actual facts.
And I don't think that defects in general is prepared to be able to be held accountable to this extent, and they need to be. It's interesting. One of the things that my wife and I did is we put in the equivalent to a FOIA for the Freedom of Information Act at the state level. That's called an ORI, which stands for an Open Records Inquiry. And we got first of all we got the runaround about how to even file this ORI. And that's a whole nother story. But after we finally got the right form and we put the information in, we went ahead and said, hey, we'd like to know the notes from all the interviews that DFACS had with my wife and I and our children. So we get this stuff back, and it took months to get this. And what what I will share is that we have a source that has provided us some of the internal uh, defects notes. So I have the notes of the actual interviews that they performed, and in it says things like the first time they had a contact with us in August of 23 was that they were investigating us for an illegal adoption. Well, that was never told to us, and that's not in the ORI. The ORI is investigating us for some ridiculous lack of supervision charge that they brought up. And another thing that's very interesting is they were using sources like we had a neighbor who was providing ring camera footage and access to their ring camera so that we lived in a cul-de-sac. So every time we came and went, DFCS was able to monitor when we came and went from our home and what we were doing like if we were in our yard. And that was one of the things they brought us up into this situation where they said, hey, there was a lack of supervision. Your son got out. He was actually in your cul-de-sac. What they're not realizing is that the ring camera footage didn't have footage of our actual front door. And our other kids were playing in our driveway in our front yard, but you don't see that on there on their camera. And then there was another incident that happened when there was a snow day that happened, and this is when we got Jacob back from us, and Jacob was outside playing in the snow with our dogs. And then there was this report that Jacob was outside playing unmonitored. First of all, he's in our front yard, and we live on a cul-de-sac, so he's not out. I mean, kids go outside and they play. All right. So the fact that he was in our front yard and he was playing with our dogs, but the report is that he was unsupervised. And we actually had to go into our ring camera and pull footage and show that my wife was actually standing on the front porch, mere 15, 20 feet away as she watched our son play in the snow. So DFCS took a seemingly innocent thing and made it like it was this dangerous situation. He was making snowballs and building a snowman. How dangerous is that?
You know what,
And
Chip? I want to touch on what you're saying right there too, because here is where you get the state wasting an incredible amount of funds on cases that are nothing. Recently, state law in the state of Georgia, after a story where a boy walked to the store and a mom, and if I'm not saying this correctly, and somebody else in the audience or who listens to this knows, excuse me, the boy walked to the store. The mom didn't know where the boy was, right? So the mom called the police. Well, she found a boy. He walked to the store. He was allowed to walk to the store because it was a small and safe town. She just didn't know where he was, and she got a little nervous, right? So about the next day, DFCS comes, and DFCS comes with the police, and they said, well, sign a safety plan or we're going to arrest you. The mom refused to sign a safety plan. The mom was arrested. The mom was arrested in front of her child. This whole debacle led to a change of state law in Georgia that pretty much had to say you cannot go to jail for allowing your child to play outside or to be walking around or go to the park, within a reasonable amount of distance. Recently, I mean, in the last week or so, there's another case with a boy who rode his scooter to the park. And this is how you have caseworkers that, don't even know state law. I mean, this is right there a waste of resources, sending a caseworker out that should have been screened out and said, oh, okay, the boy rode to the park. There you go. State law says he could do that. But the caller sees the little boy walking to the park. They, scare the boy. They say, where's your mom? The boy doesn't answer. He rides home. So obviously the person who called followed the child home, reported the address. So the caseworkers came in and they substantiated a neglect case. Now, this is actually a big case right now in Georgia because, it's hit some news articles. And the issue is state law already now says, after the first case, that you could play outside and you could ride to the park. So here we have multiple issues, including Chip's, even though in Chip's issue, they were actually outside. But let's say they weren't outside. What is wrong with a child playing outside making snowballs in his cul-de-sac when a parents are exercising their right to determine if that child is mature enough to be in that cul-de-sac or not?
Sylvia, sorry guys, hold on one second. We're trying to get the hearing up, but I don't know if it's been removed. Sylvia, I'm going to share my screen just so you can see what's going on here. So you send the link.
Okay.
I've clicked on the
Yeah.
link several times. This keeps popping up. Nothing plays. You can't get anything to go. So it says upcoming event. Then I go down and I check.
Okay, so, okay, which one is that one?
When I go to these, they're only, this one's only 42 minutes.
Okay, that one's not it.
Yep. And then when I go to this one is 17 minutes long.
No, that's not it.
And then I've tried all of them. I've been looking for it while you guys were all talking, but they might have scrubbed it. It's not there.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna click my. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Did they have a YouTube channel or anything? I find that
Um,
extremely suspicious.
I don't know if it's on YouTube. I can check, but that one was the link that had Chip and Monique's speech off of, and that's, like I took it off there. I screen recorded it off of those.
Do you remember what date that was, the hearing?
It was Friday the 20.
I just sent it to Sylvia.
Monique, can you put it in the Zoom?
I can't do that from my phone.
Here, let me do it.
So I sent it to your text message.
Yeah, it looks like they have other appropriations meetings up here, but not that one.
Yeah, this one is still up. It's actually called 406 CLOB.
Okay, that's different. Yeah, let's try that one then.
That was the room number where things happen down at the state capitol.
I mean, that's kind of odd that it's not there, because I know it was there. When you sent me the link the other day, Sylvia, I was watching it. So,
Okay, try that one. I just put it in the
all
chat.
right, let's try this. Okay. And you said about the 1 hour mark?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get there. All right, let's try this.
Are struggling
I
to
think it's
find
a
a
little bit
placement
before.
for a child that's probably got
Little before?
pending,
Yeah.
call them, and then we'll order services in non-DFAX cases. Increases
But
the
just to
total
let you
share
know,
of
her
state funding
speech
for
about
out-of-home
40
care.
minutes.
Hold on just 1 second, I'm sorry. Disregard that. The point here for out-of-home care, though, that I did not make in the joint appropriations hearing is that in this particular program budget, we don't pay for any staff. We don't retain any of those. Funds are all going out the door, and they're going to pay for.
Sorry, I'm trying to get it louder, but that's as loud as it's going to get, I think.
Foster care and primarily to all of our contracted providers. So this particular recommendation by the governor includes our current deficit reduction methods. So I think you've all heard me talk about some of the contract terminations that we had to use. Those contract terminations total $5 million, or a little over $5 million. And also for this particular calculation, it assumes a 25% reduction for the fiscal year second half. So contract terminations plus some changes in how we authorize services, those are the two main strategies that we've deployed based on the projected out-of-home care deficit. At the end of the fiscal year, to the extent that we can, we will also tap into unobligated TANF funds if we have allowable expenses to cover any delta, but we anticipate not being able to use that fund source for a remaining difference. All right, go to slide 4 for me, please. The governor's AFY 26 recommendations total $50,335,034. All right, slide 5, please. Okay. For specifically in out-of-home care, right now we have a little under 10,000 children in foster care, and that population has remained largely steady in the past 4+ years with a slight downward trend. I mentioned at the joint appropriations hearing that we interact with families based on different case types, and juvenile courts can be involved in that process if we can't assure a child's safety without judicial intervention. the judicial branch is responsible for holding parties like DFCS and parents accountable as we work through a dependency case. But ultimately, everyone involved is just trying to do what's best for the child, and we're trying to achieve permanency for that child. So if it's not reunification with their parents, we're looking for adoption, guardianship, helping the child prepare for adulthood if they age out of care, those types of outcomes. I talked also in that hearing about court-ordered services being one of the cost drivers of this projected deficit. I won't go into all of the examples that I mentioned, but I do have those if you want to hear other ones. State law does contemplate and say that juvenile courts through county funding or the child's parents, if they're able, can absorb some of our case-related costs. But that's the exception, not the rule. So typically DFCS is going to be the entity that's paying for anything that's ordered through the court for parents and children. Juvenile courts can also order us to do casework and provide services in matters where we're not a party. That practice is declining, but generally we're talking about CHINS cases and delinquency cases. Some judges at those hearings will still place children in our care, even though we're not present. And, we've talked about this in prior years, but that doesn't fulfill the mission that we're seeking, right? Which is that we want to find safe alternatives if they exist. And we want to make sure that we have legal dependency in that case to comply with the law. But at the end of the day, we still have judges that do a small number statewide that perform bench removals, is what we call them, and then will order services in non-DFCS cases. All right. Going into providers and those cost increases. Actually, if you'll just go, yeah. I mentioned this at the joint hearing. Another big cost driver involves provider expenses. We have lost a dramatic number of placement locations or beds. I hate to say beds, but since 2019, our calculations are over 800 actual spaces where we could place children that come into our care. Also, I neglected to get into this at the joint hearing, but I do think it's important. Certainly one of the cost drivers that we see in out-of-home care relates to our initiative to end hoteling. What we decided to do in 2021 was to get laser focused on that, get kids out of hotels, get kids out of DFCS offices, and we deployed essentially any strategy that we could working with our providers to find a suitable placement. So sometimes that meant we had to negotiate a child-specific rate so that they could have other supervision in that placement, that we could assist with staff augmentation, but certainly ending hoteling plays a big role in these increased costs. And instead of those costs going to a hotel-type setting, now they're going more to providers and placements, and we are seeing increased costs because some of the services that you need in a placement are going to be above and beyond what you provide, frankly, in a hotel. We have been able to maintain low numbers on any given day for a child that has to be hoteled or is, having to spend the night in an office. We're talking single digits, and typically when that occurs, it's because we're waiting on the child's managed care company, AmeriGroup, to find a psychiatric residential treatment bed for them. It's been deemed medically necessary, or we are struggling to find a placement for a child that's probably got pending charges, a delinquent youth, and there are some concerns about behavioral challenges. For placement providers, again, we have lost a significant number of those spaces to place children since 2019. Their costs are also skyrocketing. Inflation hit our providers incredibly hard. We're in the goods and services business, right? And so, that's been really tough on all of us. To conserve dwindling resources in this program budget, that is where we had to terminate some contracts and we had to change the delivery.
Okay, Monique, if you want to explain, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to explain a little bit of what we're looking at. Oops, sorry, my camera's not on. All right.
you know.
I wanted to explain what we're looking at. There's a really interesting slide that's going to come next, where it actually starts to break down exactly some of the cost changes. But you see this, steep uptick in out-of-home care. And what they're calling out-of-home care is foster care, right? When you have to take a child and you have to put it out of the home. So, why are we seeing this incredible rise in 2025? And I just wanted to stop right there because what she's saying, and you hear her, is that it's the judges, and the judges are ordering all of these services. Now, I know you've had many, many people on the show, and everybody's probably listened who watched this podcast. To all of the people on the show, what I've seen is the trend seems to be that DFCS issues an incredible amount of services to the parent. DFCS goes to the judge and says, we want the parent to have, and they list off this big list, right? We want them to have drug testing, counseling, this and this. And this is what we, as DFCS the professional, feel like needs to be done before this child can go home. The judge says pretty much, okay, DFCS, you're the one that has investigated the case and has all of the facts. With a couple rare exceptions. But here, what Candace Brose is saying is that the judges are telling DFCS what services need to be given. Well, the judges are ordering the services, but it's DFCS telling the judges what services they want put in place. So,
Yep.
a little
Good
misleading
point, Monique.
part.
Really
Yes,
good point,
very
yeah.
good point.
Well,
Also,
and she points out in there too that she's trying to find safe alternatives to some of these things. Well, like in our case, we took care of all the testing with agreed upon providers, and they didn't accept that. So that's not what they're doing, because at that point it was about keeping control and keeping Jacob in foster care longer than he needed to be. And she says we're in the goods and services business.
I think
Yes.
that,
No,
yeah,
She
I agree.
literally says
you're in
that.
the taking care of
My
children business.
my face. I was writing notes. I stopped note taking and I just looked up and I said, did she really say that?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
our children are goods because our children are not the services, obviously, right? You provide the
sometimes
service.
sometimes
So
the truth just comes out, doesn't it? I mean, we've often said, I mean, Nancy Schaefer said it. They're commodities. They're canned goods. Kids are being traded like canned goods. So she said the quiet part out loud, in my
That's
opinion.
evil. That is evil.
Yes.
That is the very root
Mhm.
of what is like bad. And
Yes.
It's called trafficking.
it
yeah,
shows
it is.
what
It is.
parents have been
And we're
saying.
not talking about having kids go off into, it doesn't, it's happening right under our noses here, because they're trafficking them to, providers that are coming in and having to do medical evaluations and then psychological evaluations and therapy and all this. I mean, and it's crazy. I'll share one more story here real quick here. When we went through all of our stuff about a state appointed psychologist and this and that, one of the things that we needed to do is we needed to go through a therapist. And they wanted us to, which is like when you're in that point, and Monique can kind of echo this as well. When you're in that point and they say, hey, we want you to do A, B, C, and D, you're like, okay, we're going to go ahead and take care of whatever they ask us. They're going to ask you to jump, and you're just going to respond with how high, because you're going to do whatever it takes to get your child back. And
Right.
it's the love that you have for that child that drives that. So what we had is they wanted us to go through like this counselor. So it was a former DFCS employee that they put us in touch with, that Ellie and I had to go there, and they wanted to have an appointment with Jacob as well. But there was one situation that really came up that was very, very unique. And so we were in the therapist's office. We go through all the testing. She has testing for Ellie, has testing for me, and then we had to be interviewed together. Well, the day that we interviewed together, we were supposed to do a visitation that afternoon. So we're in the office, and like I said, it's with a lady who's a former DFCS employee, and then she ends up telling us, well, at some point we need to work out being able to have Jacob come in, and I'd like to see his interaction with you. It's called a parental bonding assessment, which was ordered by the state. So we said, oh, okay, we can, so what does that entail? She says, oh, well, I just need to observe you all for a few minutes, just to see how you interact, like a little bit of, you guys go to the park or you play or whatever, and I can observe that. And again, we were kind of under this, we're trying to get things done. We don't want to go into court and have have that be the one thing that we need done so that we can't bring Jacob home. So we were getting everything done as soon as we possibly could. So we brought it to the therapist. Well, we have visitation today, so let's see what we can do. So we called and said, can we go ahead and do this? And the guardian ad litem said, no, we can't go ahead and schedule that. It's short notice. And, there's all these things, we don't want to have it change. We'd have to contact the transporter and all this. And it was very reasonable saying like, okay, well, we can't kind of do that at last minute like this. And so he said, well, the transporter's already bringing Jacob up to, it was like 15 minutes away from the office that we were at, and we were going to a park up in Kennesaw. So then we got, when we got the idea of, we're like, well, okay, well, how about the therapist said, well, I could go to the park and meet you guys there and do that. So we had already been told no by the guardian ad litem about bringing Jacob to the office. And then we thought, all right, well, we'll go ahead. So we call the guardian ad litem back. We couldn't get in touch with her. So we call our lawyer and we said, hey, look, we were told we couldn't bring Jacob here, but the therapist said she'll actually go if we cover the costs of her expenses to go out over there, which we did. Again, it was a cost thing and everything. But the therapist came and met us out at the park, and she observed us for 15 minutes, and off she went and she did that. Defects did not like that at all. And all of a sudden, our visitations got clamped down on, and we had to do them in the defects office, and they had to be supervised then. And all that was, we were trying to help come up with solutions so that we could comply with what defects was asking of us. And they used that against us as well.
How
So
dare you, Chip? How dare you try to take control?
Right. And I think that's the way that they look at it, and that's what the problem is.
Yes,
In
that
reality, what I think
is.
that everybody needs to hear, I mean, I don't think that the providers, the foster parents, and even the state legislature is understanding that while Candace is saying out her mouth that DFACS is paying for services that the parents very well could pay for it, just get on a Facebook group. Get on like a Georgia Parents Against DFACS, a CPS Facebook group, and what you will see is parents saying, they said I failed a drug test and I want to pay for my own drug test. I went to LabCorp, a respected company, and I brought my drug test to DFACS. It was clean. It was a hair follicle test. They said they will not accept it. DFACS's psychological report says this. I countered it with a psychological report of my own, and DFACS says they will not accept my psychological report. So I'm sorry. That's
And you know what,
my
Monique?
observation and my opinion. A bold-faced
Yep. Yep. And you know what? Candace Brose is sitting in these groups and watching these conversations over and over, and she knows exactly the conversation. She knows exactly the issues.
Oh, she does.
Um,
Oh, yeah. She sat in Georgia
and she's
Parents
still
Against
not doing anything
for
about it.
and she's
the
still she
longest time.
oh yeah. She sat
Constantly.
in there and for she did finally leave out of the Georgia parents group. But she sat in there and she watched those parents ask for help, tell them the issues, and she did nothing except for you. All they did was use it against them in court. Every one of those parents.
Yes, they did.
So she knows the problem, she knows the issue, she knows what's going on, she knows about the funding, she is the oversight of the funding. She has two positions that has never been done ever in the state of Georgia. She is the only person above her is Governor Kemp. That is the only one. And he is the only one that can do anything about this.
And what gets even really more interesting, right, is that when you have a case like ours, especially an SVU case, because apparently that's her baby law enforcement little
Mhm.
secret thing, because I've even heard her talk, and I heard her once even kind of say, well, oh, that one works for the SVU, and like it was almost like she caught herself, like, let me not talk about that.
Right.
Um, how much
I
did
don't want.
SVU cost? And how much did your SVU cases cost? And how much did the state suffer while you were personally sitting in courtrooms um, on your whatever it is that you were doing that I still can't even say what it is you were doing. But, if I was on top of a company, for example, I just it was a really small scale. I run a homeschool class group. I can't always sit in every class that I have. I have teachers that are running those classes because I have to run the program, right? So as the operator of the program, the person who's ultimately responsible to make everything happen, I have to do that job, which means that I can't be ever present everywhere else. So it's really interesting that the commissioner of DHS, I knew what DFAX was. I didn't even know what Candace Brose did or who she was, until she sat in courtrooms and everybody was gasping like, oh, the commissioner's here. I'm like, who's the commissioner? I don't even know who she is. And it should stay that way, right? It should stay that way. People really
Yeah.
shouldn't know who the commissioner of DHS is because she should be somewhere running the state. You should know your local caseworkers, even maybe, all the way up to like the head of Cobb County. So outside of, some serious money issues, things that were questionable, line items that we're not sure where the receipts are, and, all of those things, there's a lot of time spent.
It,
Yeah,
it
That
does
piece of
cause you to
here,
scratch your head.
a lot of time, right? It causes you to scratch your head because
Yeah.
I'm not accusing her of not doing her job. I mean, I think other people are, the numbers are. However, it is questionable when you have so much time. And when I found out who she was, my first question is, all right, so she's over not just DFACS, right? The Division of Elder Care, this is food stamps, this is Division of Family and Children's Services. You have a lot of work. And then not only that, you are also the director of DFACS, right? So that's two jobs. One job encompasses three large divisions in the state of Georgia, and one job oversees multiple counties and all of the children of the state of Georgia. I can't imagine there's any way that you have the slightest amount of time to sit in boring me and Chip's court hearings. I'm sorry, Chip. I don't mean you're boring. You're awesome. But you know what I mean, in the grand scheme of things, right? This isn't like, and our cases were called high profile. This wasn't like, the George Floyd case or something like that, right? That's what I think of high profile. I mean,
Right.
one day I'm your boring homeschool mom, and the next day people are telling me I have a high profile case. And, Sylvia tells me all the time, I'm still boring. She's gotten to know me, and I am still boring. I love it. I love it.
She's definitely not a trafficker.
No.
It's an abuse of power, and it's not about the
Yeah.
kids. It's about the money. And I think we need to just kind of going back about to this, and it's got to be accountability and audits and oversight, all the things that Candace doesn't want anything. She doesn't want anything to do with all that because it's like turning on a light in a room full of cockroaches. Everyone's going to go scatter from there, and they're going to go running to kind of save themselves. And we just need to take a closer look about all these things that come together and all these resources. I mean, they're taxpayer funded resources, and
Mhm.
who knows where they're going. And it's a
My money,
misappropriation of funds and
your money, Sylvia, our tax money.
state resources that could go other places, or it
Well,
could go into these group homes and then be able to provide better services for the
Oh,
kids that
right.
do need it.
So let me
Chip.
give you this quick example of, oh, sorry, Gino. Let me say this really quick.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
Chip is saying, like, for example, and this is the kind of stuff that if the public just knew, it would infuriate the public, right? So when my daughter spent her time in a group home, and I don't even think we ever actually got to my daughter's case, but when she ended up not being able to come home for Thanksgiving, right? So when I found out she wasn't coming home for Thanksgiving, I asked a group home what they were doing for the kids for Thanksgiving. I mean, you can go down the road and every charity under the sun will give you a box. Walmart and Aldi's, they come up with those little little flyers that'll tell you how to get your Thanksgiving dinner for $40, right? Even if it's some canned greens and some boxed potatoes. It doesn't have to be the works, but it's the idea of gathering together to get that feeling, especially for kids that are away from home and family, to give them a sense of that. But they said no, they were having some kind of regular dinner, and I don't want to make it up, but it was just something so basic that in my mind I think I translated it to like chicken nuggets or something. Not saying that it was chicken nuggets that she said. So I offered to cater the group home dinner. I did cater the group home dinner. By the way, that got used against me.
How dare you? How
Hmm.
dare you show kindness and consideration?
She froze up. Monique, can you hear
She
us?
froze. Yeah, she
Uh,
froze.
Well,
but that's the exact thing. How dare, like, they don't want you showing any kind of kindness, any kind of empathy, any
no,
type of,
they don't want humans.
yeah.
Right? They just
Now,
want people to
now,
say yes. Chip, I'm glad you segued into the money thing. We'll get. Hold on, let me fix the screen here. I'm glad you segued into the money because there we go.
All
Okay,
right, sorry.
Monique, back. Yeah, you want
I
to
don't
finish up? Go ahead.
where did you last hear me?
Well,
It
you were
was
talking
when
about,
you catered the
and they
group
used it
home.
against you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, they used it against me in court, and it all of a
Oh.
Suspense.
They don't like what she's saying.
yeah,
I
no
guess.
kidding. How convenient.
I
Candace
don't.
is on that too.
You froze again, Monique. Now we can hear you.
I said it became, where did I get money to cater a whole group home meal?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
How
I'm
dare
sorry, I just
you?
want to let you
How
know.
how well how ironic they're asking you where
And
did you
what was
get money?
hilarious is I'll tell you how much it was. It was only $250, right? So
These people.
I mean, it was Cracker Barrel for $250
There you
for,
go.
Oh, you're
a group of
trafficking
like,
for sure,
oh
Monique.
man,
How in
I'm
the
making
world?
Trafficking
all of
for
the money,
sure.
How
right? I mean, our Thanksgiving
how
meal at home cost us like $1,000. It's ridiculous.
how in the world with a straight face are they able to ask you, to have the guts to ask you, there's other words I'd like to use, ask you how much money you spent, and yet she can't find $85 million. Like, give me a break. Like, this
But
is
they
this
were
is this is
accusing
the
her of
hypocrisy.
trafficking, Gino. They were
Right.
accusing her.
Where did I get $250 from?
Unbelievable. So I want to go back to the money thing. I'm glad Chip brought that up because I was about ready to touch on this. If you notice at the bottom of this out of home care, I'm not sure if you guys, it's probably cut off on your screen, but I'll read it to you. It's talking about where DHS utilizes a mix of state and federal money, and so they use Title 4E, they use TANF, they use another OHC program. So it's 380, almost $381 million in state money, 31 million in Title 4E money, and then TANF is 109 million, almost 110 million dollars. That's a whole bunch of money that isn't being spent on children and families in the state of Georgia. That's for sure. And I do want to touch on something else. So TANF, just so everybody understands what TANF is, I pulled it up here. Let me get my screen.
That's what they use the SNAP. And you know what? That's also what they use for Candace Brose's Special Victims Unit that miraculously just had 1.7 million dropped in there.
Well, I'm not actually sure. I think that what I understood, and just to correct you if I can, I think what I understood is that they're requesting some amount of millions from the TANF block grant. So the TANF block grant was historically, and it doesn't fund SNAP, but it was that cash assistance for needy families, right? So, you could be on food stamps, but at some point you may, need cash assistance. It was very, very, very low income families that would get a couple $100s a month for a period of certain months. But that is apparently being used now for child welfare services. I listened to the very first appropriations meeting on December 18th. I think it was Barton and Family Law. I mean, it's the December 18th appropriations meeting, and it was the first speaker, so anybody could listen to it. She went into great detail to explain what a better use of the TANF block grant could go. And the TANF block grant could go to give preventable services to families, for finances, for example, to prevent them from entering foster care rather than to use the money to fund foster care. So, what we're doing is well, she also gave a number for a huge chunk of the children in foster care are not abused. They're not sexually abused. They're not these children that we think are the worst of the worst, locked in the closet. I mean, they are those, but these are not the majority of the children. They're children that are coming out of poverty, right? Somebody with their lights off, somebody that's having housing instability. TANF block grant can be used to solve that problem so children never have to go into foster care. But instead, what the state wants to do with it is they want to fuel the monster more. So they don't want to help the families. They want to walk in, they want to take your kid because you're having housing instability, right? Meanwhile, you love your child, you've never abused your child, you're just going through a rough patch. They don't want to help you
Mhm.
with that.
No.
They just want to take your child and then take this government funds to use it to take care of your children under their care, which costs, as we see, quite, the millions of dollars.
Yep.
The state and the taxpayers. And I don't think the taxpayers really understand this. The taxpayers consistently think that when a child has entered foster care, it is because the child has been abused. It must be so, right? Somebody did an investigation, somebody did their due diligence. They wouldn't take a child from a family that a child is not abused. Well, look again. I mean, look even to the professionals. I think the Casey Foundation has some numbers on this. So the
Oh
number.
yeah.
Sylvia, it's 90% unsubstantiated.
91% are unsubstantiated cases, and that's children that are in foster care. And you literally have it right, Monique, because they're not keeping the kids in the home. Like they could like keep the kids in the home and use that TANF money for them. Instead, it's almost like it's a crime to be poor. And it is a lot of people that are poor that need help, just utilities, food, the necessities. And they're using that as a crime instead of help.
Do you know how much money the state would save, federal money,
Right.
if they just gave needy families money to get through a rough patch, like Monique said? Like I just looked at it. It's almost $520 million projected for 2026. 500. You don't think that could help a whole bunch of needy families, especially if they?
Right.
What are they saying? It's just over 10,000 kids in the state of Georgia in foster care. Correct?
Now
So-
I'm excited.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, I mean it doesn't make any sense. It's never made sense. I remember, when I first kind of got involved in this and I was trying to figure out what the heck's going on. I remember we had someone on and they came after them because they couldn't keep their lights on. And it's like, okay, well, give them $150 to keep their lights on, for crying out loud. You can't just give them $150. No, instead you got to steal their kids from them because they're terrible people and they can't keep their lights on. Like it's this
why
is
can't
like
we
ludicrous.
do like a cost benefit analysis and sit there and think like, all right, hey, $150 for lights.
Exactly.
We're going to pay a transporter and a foster care, and then all of a sudden the foster care is going to have all these services that are put in place, and it's unnecessary when really you're not fixing the problem, and you're creating more problems and all of it's at taxpayer expense.
No.
And
And
that-
let me.
Well, let me sorry, Monique, just to follow up on that. That if you're in the audience, you have to scratch your head and you have to say, well, wait a minute. Why is the state so like gung ho on going after this and taking children from parents? It's because they won't get that federal money. There's quotas. Sylvia's talked about this extensively on other shows. You can go back and watch some of our shows. Go back and watch when we had Connie on talking about Title IV funding. It's an incentivized system to traffic children. So if they don't meet the numbers, they don't get that federal dough.
That's a great point. Why can't we get some transparency into what's going on? I mean, are defects employees, are they like rewarded for getting a child and putting him into foster care? When the investigator that took Jacob the day that we went into court took Jacob and dropped him off at his first foster care house. We met the couple, and they said when they dropped Jacob off that he was a nonverbal autistic runner, which hits all the benchmarks for having the most federal funding that comes.
Yeah.
The kid was very, very talkative. My wife was always having conversation with him and talking with him about things, and he had manners, please, thank you, all that. So that it was just completely false. Autistic? Are you kidding me? No.
And they don't check it.
They had no basis and no founded. But if they claim that, what does that do? And all of a sudden they have to find a provider. Now the provider is going to go through testing and evaluation, all at state money, because you had somebody who came and misrepresented what was going on. Nonverbal autistic runner. None of that had happened.
Or it's going to verify all of those things with somebody in their own system, like Monique brought up earlier. Like it's got to be one of their therapists. You can't go outside of their blockchain, right? Like. This is the nonsense that's been going on for decades.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And again, the kids are the ones that suffer.
Yeah. Go ahead, Monique.
I wanted to show you, and I'm not sure if I sent Sylvia an email. I'm not sure if she sent you an email because it actually is going to come next. on Candace Brose's slides and talking points, right? So the next slide that she gives is, let me see, let me pull it up. Sylvia, did you send that one to Gino?
Um, what are you talking about?
I sent you an email. It's called delivered service costs. So delivered service
I
costs,
didn't even know you sent it to me. I can send it.
okay.
Do you know the timestamp? I'll just fast forward.
I don't know the timestamp. So, but the problem with the timestamp, and we could keep going, is that it's so small. So I had to screenshot it and I had to
I
zoom
just
it.
sent it to you.
Oh, you did?
It's
Okay.
very interesting. So you see
Where'd
the
you send it?
line.
Telegram?
Email.
Oh, email.
Email.
on the job training as well as our universities
Sorry.
to get.
The video won't stop playing. Okay. Let me pull this up. Okay.
All
Delivered
right. So
services costs. Hopefully you guys
So
can see that.
first, this is the largest that this is gonna get. Okay, so she shows, this, and if you've never been to an appropriations meeting, it's on a screen all the way in the front, and you really, can't really see any of what this says. You could barely see any of what this says. Had to screenshot the little screen to then bring it larger, and this still kind of has almost the same looking curve as it does before. Now look really quick at the bottom where it says child welfare timeline, right? What is a timeline? Is usually something that we have with dates. The only thing that we can identify a date on this is COVID, because we all know when that happened, right? COVID pandemic. So we have a timeline that is supposed to match, some these services here, but what we don't have is any times or dates on the timeline. I mean, I'm not sure. I thought that a timeline was supposed to have times and dates, right? Am I wrong?
No, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure you're
Am I
right.
missing something?
There, that's a
Right
little
at the
better.
bottom. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's in the
Okay.
name, timeline.
We have a lot of events. So what I've done with this timeline is, you see where it says COVID pandemic right here? And somewhere in
Yes.
like the middle-ish.
Yeah, right there.
Everything before that I call BC. And everything after that I call AC. So we got the before COVID and we got the after COVID.
Yeah.
So
Lots of
there's a
lots of
lot of,
cuties.
by the way, here's the other thing, and I've read a lot of graphs in my life. We got a lot of really similar colors. So if you can you see that? Like a lot of really kind of close-ish blues and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
really close-ish greens. So it's really actually difficult to tell what's what here. Um, but one thing that I noticed, and let me see, I took a couple notes here. So, um, all right, so crisis prevention and support services look like they stay, this crisis prevention or support services look like they stay about the same from 2019. There was, and I can't really actually see it there. Give me 1 second to go through my notes. Increase.
You know, folks, if you think what's going on in Minnesota right now with all the daycare centers is big,
Okay.
that doesn't even scratch the surface
Say that
of
one
what's
more
going
time.
on with this. I said, everything that's happening in Minnesota with the exposure of the daycares, it doesn't even scratch the surface. Like that's the beginning of it. But wait till people start understanding foster care and adoption and CPS and the family court. It's a racket.
Yep.
And it shows you that bad people will do bad things.
That's right.
They will sell their soul for $1.
Mm-hmm.
Treatment.
I also noticed that Candace was
I'm sorry, I
appointed.
can't, I'm not sure a little bit.
What happened? Is she frozen again?
All right, so I'm
Nope.
not
No, she's good.
looking, so I'm looking
You-
through my notes, but can you hear me?
yes.
All
Yeah.
right, so I'm looking through
Breaking
my
up a
notes and I
little.
can't find the exact note, but the note that I had and not looking. Hello?
Yep, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Better?
Can you hear us, Monique?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you the
We
whole
hear
time.
you
All right.
fine.
So what I noticed is pretty much when they stop. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes.
All
She's
right.
getting
So what I
feedback.
noticed is that
Her,
when they stopped delivering a lot of family intervention services to help the families, their out of home care costs went up. So that's what you're seeing on the curve. You're seeing a lot of the costs go up when they stopped actually helping the families. So yeah, their BA costs went up, their transportation costs went up. You see a lot of that, in after COVID's AC. I think
think she's.
my side is breaking up a little bit.
We
I
we
think
can
so
hear
too.
we can hear everything you're saying, but I think you're having trouble with some feedback. She brings up a good point with the transportation. Um, Transportation, you hear that, you're like, well, of course we got to take kids from one place to another, right? And
Okay, yeah, I think that
we
we're
got to
having a little technical
bring them to
difficulty.
one service to another. But then, you brought that up in the meeting, I believe, in your speech there in front of the hearing, Chip, about the transportation and how they just wasted so much money transporting Jake for nothing, like ridiculous stuff, right?
Yeah. And by the way, if they're in foster care, all right, you're going to have to pay for that transportation. If they're not, and you leave them with their families, then you don't.
That's right.
So,
Very
the
simple.
more kids you put in, I mean, and then the longer you keep them, I mean, that was things they pointed out in that speech as well. You're putting
Yeah.
more kids in foster care, keeping them there longer, and then you're moving around, and then you're not coming up with alternative solutions. Like we had, like I pointed out, two families that were willing to take Jacob and keep him locally within this community. So,
And
so you tell me what was better for Jacob, which was the one question that was never asked. What was better for Jacob? One, keep him with his family. Two, keep him with his community. Three, don't even put him in foster care in the first place. So all those things weren't even considered. What they were looking at is trying to point the finger and come up with create problems and find situations or find difficulties that they can pin their reasoning for putting him into foster care in the first place. And it's just not necessary. And there's so many families that are going through similar things where if they just need assistance or guidance or direction, and we're not getting that. And the trigger of just and pulling the trigger and removing kids from the home without really having a plan of what to do, and how to either prevent it or find what people need in order to make sure that the families can be brought back together at some point. That's not what's considered. Like I still remember going into court when the day that they took Jacob, they had no reason. They didn't have any idea who we were. We finally had to raise our hand and say, "Hey, wait a second. We've been caring for Jacob for 4 years. Do we get an opportunity to say something?" And it kind of threw the entire hearing off. And ultimately it didn't change anything. In hindsight, if I'd had a little bit more understanding and preparation and a lawyer that was present, and I don't think Jacob would have ever been removed.
that's probably why they didn't tell you, Chip.
Yeah.
They didn't want you to be prepared. They didn't want you to have representation. They wanted you to be caught off guard. And that is their tactic.
Yeah, why is that? Because it's seeking the federal dollars. As soon as we get
Yep.
Jacob put in, nonverbal autistic runner, that checks all the little boxes that they can get for the most funding, and then all of a sudden it's incumbent upon us to be able to prove to ourselves. The state didn't have to build their case. Now we had to build our case to get them back.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
there's no
It's
there's
awful.
there's no reason for the state to want to help everyday citizens in their state, right? They want to help their own state families, the ones that are being fed by the federal government. That's the whole trick behind this, to get that money. And then when you see it, it's crystal clear. I mean, what's going on in Minnesota with the whole daycare thing? The kid's running around. He's going to these different daycares, and there's not even kids there. Thank God there isn't, because God only knows what would be happening to those kids, at least in some of them.
Yeah.
But that's waste and abuse and fraud, right? And you have the same thing going on down here, but they're actually harming children. They're actually trafficking them. That's, and I'm not saying that's not happening in the daycare. I'm sure it is somewhere. But in most of the ones that was exposed, they were just empty warehouses or empty buildings with no one in it, and they're just taking the federal money. And it's the same thing, except kids are actually being, like you said, transported. And then the state's like, Candace is sitting there saying, well, yeah, our costs are so high for this because of blah, blah, blah. No one ever addresses the root problem. No one ever gets down to the brass tacks. Oh, we're stealing kids. Like, she's never going to say that. But that's exactly what's going on. And it's not just Georgia. This is all over America. It's been going on for a long time. And, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. We've talked about different suggestions, different ideas, different points of views. But, I mean, me, and I think, Chip, you're probably on the same page with me, it's defund the whole thing. Like, this is ridiculous. What is going on? The head of the snake is the one that needs to be cut off. Yeah, you're kind of in and out, Monique, but we were listening. We could hear you. But that's the
Okay, I
frustrating
couldn't hear
part.
you. I'm sorry.
That's the frustrating part about it is like you cut the head off, the money stops. Obviously, there are kids that are really abused that need to be helped. That, yes, we have to continue to fund that for sure. But that's
they don't accept alternative solutions. So one of the things that we thought like, okay, well, you're going to put Jacob in foster care. Well, then we'll become a foster family. We're not in it to get paid for it or anything like that. But if we become certified by the state, then we can go ahead and you can put him with us. And that's meeting the state imposed requirement, which is ridiculous in the first place. But it's still, at that point, we were looking at what are some alternatives for us to be able to get Jacob home. And we applied. We started going through classes, and the classes, the organization that we went through has to get DFCS approval and funding, and we were denied by DFCS to become a foster home. So,
or another example, the same organization, Chip, when I said it was Faith Bridge, and this is a faith organized like foster care kind of provider, right? They're in a lot of churches. I called Faith Bridge, and Faith Bridge has a division in my church that we go to. And I said, hey, look, they're about to place my son in a group home. Can we get him in a foster home? I would rather him be in a temporary place with a good, faithful family than in a group home. And they were on board. They were on board. And then all of a sudden they got a call from the state that said no. He couldn't.
Because it was a high profile case and higher ups have intervened. We were never given exactly who the higher ups or any of the information was, but it's funny because when I look through the DFCS notes that I have provided to me, Candace Roche, her name is on those as being at a majority of those meetings.
Oh, I was given a name. It was really clear it was Candace. She made a lot of phone calls during the duration of the case personally.
I mean, there's 10,000 kids in the system. I mean, she focuses on the wrong things.
I'm sure if I named a lot of names, heads would roll in the state office there because there was quite a bit of people that didn't agree with her and what she was doing to us.
Well, I think, Monique, you brought up a good point earlier. Like, why is she picking and choosing which family she's going to go and sit in and listening in the case? Like, that was one of the things I thought of. I'm like, why is the commissioner, who should have her hands full every single day in the state of Georgia with all these, these 10,000 kids, why is she picking and choosing which cases she's going to go sit down and listen to and interject? Like, literally, like, have the weight of her stare in the room. That doesn't make any sense to me.
And listen, that by itself is influence, right?
Candace Bros called our kids' school and spoke to some of the administrators and teachers that are at our kids' school. And so I see that, and it's in the notes, which the state didn't provide me because the ORI that I submitted here was scrubbed. And so it's funny because I have the scrub version from the states, and I also have the actual notes that the state took on us, and they don't match up. They don't align. So what are you hiding? What are you covering up? What don't you want me to know?
Well, it's really funny. I did an ORI too, and I also got denied. And here's the best reason why I got denied. Remember, this is a child abuse investigation, right? And there's a handbook that DFCS has as to how to conduct investigations. And one of the first things that you do, besides outside of speaking to the children, if the children are in school, you speak to the person that is being accused of child abuse. So when I went to do ORI to get a copy of the case, we were told that we were not allowed to have a copy of the case because I, nor my husband, was ever interviewed for the case. Which is quite true, actually. We had no idea what was going on during a good bit of, the beginning of all of this. And we were never interviewed for a child abuse case. So we did end up having a case of abuse substantiated against us that we cannot, properly fight because we don't know why or how or what the case says because we were never interviewed for the case. Remember, if you see the body camera footage, one day they just come out of nowhere and pick up my son.
Yeah.
So
you know what else is funny? I was just thinking this. So I find it very ironic that she showed up at both of your hearings, both, several times at different junctures, but yet at the hearing a week ago, she didn't stick around and listen to you guys talk.
Oh yeah, she did not listen. She did not.
That's odd. It seems like she would want to hear from the families in her state.
Oh, I suppose she must have had suddenly better things to do.
Yeah.
Or point out the fact that both of our cases have ended in us adopting our children. So what good did the state really do? What did they do other than traumatize 3 children?
Or I like to say readoption in our case because it's incredibly questionable, my son's adoption dismissal. But, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there because that I can't prove.
Yeah, it's
Sad.
crazy.
All right, Monique, let's watch your video from the hearing here.
All right.
I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. I sent a letter to a few members yesterday, but I wanted to come in person to express some of the points I made to the subcommittee. I have heard testimony from many providers, and I would like to offer a parent's perspective missing from recent discussions about the $85 million DFCS budget, and how DFCS practice is one of the key drivers of those increasing costs for out-of-home care. I'm a mom to 5 children. My husband and I are business owners and active members of our community and church. We became involved with DFCS in 2 separate cases involving our adopted children. Neither case involved abuse, neglect, or safety concerns as documented, reasons for removal. Both stem from paperwork errors related to private adoptions and guardianship. Despite this, our children entered foster care, and the cases expanded in scope, duration, and cost far beyond what was necessary. From the outset, we were financially able and willing to pay for our own services to expedite reunification, counseling, parenting classes, drug testing, and home studies. DFCS explicitly refused to accept any independent completed services. Instead, we waited months for state-approved services, prolonging foster care placements and increasing costs to the state. Our cases span 2 counties, Carroll and Cobb. Services completed in one county were not accepted in the other, forcing duplication at additional expense. Home studies were stopped, restarted, rejected, and contracted multiple times, despite our willingness to pay privately, resulting in redundant and duplicative costs and subsequent delays, which incurred more costs to the state. DFCS also refused to assess willing kinship family placements. These placements were not denied due to failed background checks. They were never evaluated after multiple requests. As a result, our children were placed in group homes 4 hours away. This led to extensive use of paid transporters for visitation, costing the state hundreds of dollars per trip, while the family placement options were never explored. Despite testimony suggesting courts are driving up costs by ordering services, our experience shows DFCS routinely recommends or requires excessive and unnecessary services. We were ordered to complete the maximum number of parenting classes, marriage counseling, with no allegations of domestic violence or marital instability, and continued services even when providers recommended reunification. When those recommendations were ignored and our child's mental health deteriorated, requiring even more services at a higher expense to the state. Of note, the commissioner was personally involved in the cases with both our children and a key decision maker as to what provider payment and process we were required to complete. In the courtroom, Commissioner Brose sat at the table with the special appointed attorney general and informed the SAG of her DFCS expectations. Georgia child welfare laws and DFCS policies are reasonable on paper. The problem seems to be inconsistent application. failure to make efforts to avoid placing children in care, refusal to accept parent-funded services, failure to prioritize kinship placements, and systemic duplication. These practices lengthen foster care stays, increase trauma for children, and significantly inflate costs. In our case alone, despite having no evidence of maltreatment prior to removal, we have estimated the state has paid over $100,000 for our children to be in DFCS custody. Unfortunately, we are not the only family that has shared similar experiences. We respectfully urge this body to examine how often DFCS refuses parent-funded services. How often are kinship placements declined without assessments? How often are services duplicated across counties? How frequently DFCS recommendations and not judicial overreach drive excessive costs? And lastly, one more thing I added today after hearing the Commissioner's testimony. I believe this statement is very telling as to the unnecessary removals being conducted by DFCS and SVU. Quote, "If we remove from grandma who does not actually have guardianship," close quote. Please also examine how often are safe and happy children removed for reasons like lack of guardianship, which could easily be remedied and have saved budgeted funds for those children who actually need it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Well done.
Yes.
Both of you guys were just like, you hit it out of the park. It was so good. I could watch it a million times. Monique, in your case, your mom was willing to take the child, if I remember correctly, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not just my mom. It was my mom, but my mom actually had less space. She was living with my grandmother, but my mother-in-law was an excellent resource, right? She was an employee of Georgia State for many years in academia. She's had a clean background, never a drug user. I mean, she's retired now. She has a house with a beautiful spare entire bedroom, right? They refused both children to her. Not just that, family, friends. I have family and friends that have multiple bedrooms that are free. One friend, all her children have, graduated and become adults. Another family that just happen to have, be very blessed and they have extra and spare bedrooms. So all of these are wonderful people with clean criminal records, no drug abuse history, and they were never even looked at. I gave an entire list and, not a single bit. And actually, to speak to the court order, the day we want our son, that court order explicitly states that DFCS refused to put my son in any home-like placement, right? This was at the point, they failed so badly. I think the judge was just so fed up with them. That's why we got custody back even before the adjudication hearing. They were ordered to look into family placement. I mean, it was so egregious. The order actually says that it's clear that DFCS is going to refuse to place the child with anybody that has a familiar association with us because they want what they want.
Isn't there already kinship laws in place in Georgia? I mean, isn't that where they're supposed to go first?
Oh yeah, it's in the handbook. It's in Georgia laws. And
Yes.
Georgia law, Gino, it's federal law, and so there's been a lot of talk about why DFCS isn't really tapping into a lot of their Title IV-E funding, even though you see a lot of it, right? But a lot more is possible. They have to follow a guideline of federal law in order to get 4E funding, and that's part of the problem. They're not following the guidelines, so a lot of the cases aren't getting funded by 4E. What they're being funded by is, we the people,
Right.
Georgia taxpayers.
Right. I think
Oh,
about.
I remember what I was going to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember, I got really excited earlier. What I actually wanted to say now that I heard her talking about, reminded myself of the speech about services. So we were talking about people in poverty and, the cost of the state and the removal for a child that's poor. So a snapshot of what people really don't understand that looks like is, for example, if they take the mom's kid away because the mom's lights are off or she doesn't have running water or something, right? That's a simple water bill, that's a simple light bill. We get those things back on. The child could thrive happily in the home. But what they do is they'll take the child away. And then, let's say mom is working the best job that she can or whatever that job is. One, she's now going through a sadness because her children have been taken, right? It's very hard. It's just overwhelming when your child is taken and removed and you do not know where that child is. So I can't imagine, and kudos to anybody who works and keeps going to work during that week and the next day. I was blessed to where I'm a work from home and stay at home mom. But they start to put you through the ringer of services, right? So one, they want to require you to have all of your utilities on. They want you to have stable housing. They put you through a psychological test. If you have anything so much as, anxiety, they're going to want you to do mental health treatment. They want you to do counseling. They want you to do visits with your child, of course. Sometimes they want you to do visits with the child, like in Chip's case, within the DFCS hours. Well, that happens from 9 to 5, right? A lot of these therapy providers, they only have time before 5. Some do, some have after 5. Then you have parenting classes. You have to take parenting classes. A lot of these are at 10 a.m., they're at 11 a.m., and they're at set times, right? So I've heard of people losing their jobs, and I can see how
Yep.
that is possible because I was on some kind of a Zoom meeting sometimes, and I had one therapist tell me that she's never going to take a therapy case where there's therapy in place, in another kind of avenue, right? Because we were doing marriage counseling and this counseling and that counseling and counseling with my son and counseling with my daughter, right? So we had 4 counselings in place, all kind of disconnected, right? That was when I was talking about services across counties. I was doing some counselings in Carroll County. We're doing some counties in Cobb County. And it was unsustainable. I remember thinking to myself, I can't imagine if I had a job.
Yeah, no, that is, I've seen so many parents lose their job because they were trying to stay up with the classes. And then having a job is part of the case plan. So then they'll
Right.
say, "Oh, you lost your job." So they literally railroad the family until they can't make it. And like,
Right.
I mean, on some of these cases, I'm like trying to help the mom do these classes to get them done, and you can't because it's during, like you said, they're running all over the place every single day, every day.
Let's be honest, as the employer, right? Because I've been in that position too. I had a staffing agency for many years. And before I went through this, I can't say I would understand. At the end of the day, I need you to be here and you need to do this job, right? If I hire you to do childcare and the daycare and you're the person that needs to be in the room, I can't let you go 5 times a week for multiple hours every day because you have a thing. That means maybe you don't need to work. So when a parent loses their job, like their case plan almost starts over. They say you have to keep a job for 6 months or something like that, right? So now you start over with your 6 months when you get your new job. But you're also beating a law timeline because I think it's between 12 to 15 months. If you don't have that case plan done and you don't have everything together, they're going to terminate your rights. So now they terminate your rights. You can't see the kid anymore. Or if you miss visitation, they start to say you and the child are no longer bonded, the child that they took from you.
Yep. Yeah.
So parents lose their children with what all started with maybe a $200 bill, and their family ties are severed, kinships are not considered. It's disgusting. And when I went, into this, just looking at everything with eyes wide open, I couldn't believe what they were putting people through. Like I said, again, like we were very blessed that we could afford certain things that I
Yeah.
know the people that were going through cases like this couldn't afford. And when I, saw what they do to people, it literally makes me sick.
Yeah.
It's an
It's
intentional catch-22 they put parents in. It's intentional. Monique, you brought up great points. Okay, so they're going to have meetings when you're supposed to be at a job working. They know that. They're not stupid. They're putting them in a position where, okay, oh my gosh, if I don't get to this parenting meeting, I might never get my kids back. And then so you're in a dilemma. Now the parent's like, oh my gosh, but I got to pay my bills. I got to sustain my household so that the government sees that I'm a fit parent. Like, this is what they do to people. They know that. It's intentional. The whole system is rigged against the family so they can make money. And they laugh. I'm telling you, behind the scenes, I know. We've had people on that said they heard them, both sides, the defendant side and the prosecutor side, both laughing in court together about the case.
yeah.
Because it's just so funny. It's so funny they're going to steal kids from the parents. It's just hilarious. And that's how diabolical this whole thing is, to put you in a catch-22 where the parents just at a loss. And while this is going on, just like you said, Monique, You're in a state of depression. Of course you are. Your heart is breaking. You don't
Oh,
get
but
to see
wait,
your
wait.
children.
You can't tell your therapist, that's the
Right.
state-corrected therapist, that you're depressed, right? Because else you might not get your children back because you're too depressed.
Yes. They'll use that against you too.
Unreal.
All
Absolutely
right.
unreal.
Gina, I just have one last thing before we go. Because it is getting, yes, we are almost up to 500 signatures. We are 2 signatures away. 2 signatures away from 500. I know we can do this. So please, I'm gonna drop it in the comments. Please sign. I think Chip said it the best. She's in over her head. She's proven she can't do this job. And she was giving 2 positions that has never been given to one person. So maybe it is the governor that should step in now.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, this does not have to be citizens of Georgia signing this, so anybody can sign this petition. Boy, wow.
Yes.
All right, well, lots of good information. Chip and Monique, thank you again for coming on and
Yes, thank you guys.
kind of rehashing what we've talked on other shows about, but it's so important that people understand what's going on right under their nose, right in your neighborhood. Literally. I mean, this is all over. It's not just in Georgia. Georgia's bad. Gosh, Arizona's terrible. Florida's terrible. California's terrible. Like it's bad. And it's all about money. So we gotta.
It is, and it's about getting the word out. And I appreciate both you, Sylvia, you and Gino, both of you, making these efforts to just make sure that people are heard and that this story gets out as much as we can. Because I think is until it hits home and it happens to you, and it becomes very, very personal when you see stuff like this, it just changes you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I will be an advocate for this, and I will push for it, and I will do whatever I can to make it right so that there are other families that won't have to experience what we did.
Yes.
I think one of the goals that we need to really focus on is breaking the stigma that's been placed on so many parents. Because just like we said earlier, it's a 90% unsubstantiated rate that children are being taken away. Think about that. 90% of kids taken from loving parents. And then, no, it's the parents. They're terrible people. They're drug abusers. They neglect their children. Their house isn't clean. They can't pay their bills. They can't feed their children. All lies, 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 slander. So we got to break that stigma, and we got to literally take the money away from them.
Yeah.
Monique, any last words before we close out for the night?
No, I don't think I have any last words. I really hope that, with the news is really watching this, the appropriations committee is watching this, and I really hope the governor, I mean, not this necessarily, but this crisis, and I hope the governor is looking at the huge crisis that he has created to the state of Georgia, because at the end of the day, this $85 million deficit is affecting families to see their children. There's no transporters right now. It's affecting children who have special needs from receiving their behavioral aids, their therapies that they need, their ABA therapies, if they have autism. And I mean, that's not a care level that the state should be providing. We've taken these children from their families, and if these children need therapies and care, they need to be provided with those therapies and care, or they need to be returned home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Send the kids home, do an audit of cases that you have, and obviously, if it's absolutely unsafe, we don't want to send a kid home. But if it's lies and BS, to be honest, send them home. Save you some money right there.
That's right. The number one job of state government and federal government is to protect the family. That's what you're elected to do. Number one, uphold the Constitution. And we didn't even get into the Constitution tonight, but they, by the way, just teaser for maybe the next show, they don't use the Constitution. They don't need that. All right. Well,
Policy and procedures.
Yeah. Sylvia, any last words?
No, I mean, my thing is Candace wants to say that they've done everything possible to make sure that they're cutting cost, but they won't return the kids that shouldn't be in care. Like that, like Monique said, that would stop a huge, I mean, that would fix, I mean, the majority, that would fix all the problems. Stop taking kids that shouldn't be taken.
Yeah, that was never brought up in that hearing. I waited the whole, I don't know, I watched 2.5, 3 hours, whatever it was. And I never heard like anybody say, hey, maybe if we weren't stealing kids, we wouldn't have to worry about this. That never came up. Interesting.
Odd, very odd.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much over on X, Rumble, and the Foxhole. We appreciate all of you. Please, if you could like, share, and subscribe, that would help us tremendously get this word out. We really need the likes and shares. That is, if you don't want to subscribe, hey, that's between you and yourself. We need this to go viral. We need people to understand what's going on. I know in the chat over here, Inate said this should be made into a movie. Yeah, honestly, we have so many stories that could each individually be movies. Like Netflix should do a series of, 100 families and what's been done to these families, not only in Georgia, but the rest of the country. It's so appalling, absolutely appalling. So anyway, God bless you guys. Have a great night. We'll see you next Wednesday for another episode of Rescued Foster. Chip and Monique, thanks as always. We appreciate both of you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a great night, everybody. God bless.
Insecure and left alone to defend for ourselves. We are praying to the Lord for when this nightmare is going to end. How many more sleepless nights? How much more pain and tears do we have to endure? When can I see my family or someone who cares for me? Are we not good enough? Or are we just some test rats that have to follow orders? Are we just worth $1? Or are we actually being taken care of? Our hearts are burning in pain, and tears keep falling from our cheeks. Tired of crying and having our emotions in cycles. Our voices are being empowered by the ones who have more authority than us. However, today is the day it ends. No more feeling ashamed and leaving abandoned. We are standing up tall and raising our voices high. We are a child of God, and our work has just begun. God thinks we are worth enough and worth fighting for. God has our back and no need to fear. If God is for us, who can be against us? Romans 8:31. Now one more child is going to be left alone and abandoned. Thank you, Jesus, for all you have done for us, and all glory goes to you. In Jesus' name, amen.